Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We'll get moving here shortly. I just want to allow some time for everyone to fire up the GoToWebinar app. All right, let's get started. My name's Kyle Gears and I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager here at YCharts. I cover our relationships with asset management firms. If you have questions during today's webinar, you can submit them on the left-hand side of your screen. Please keep in mind that the content of this webinar is meant for educational purposes only and is not intended to be used as investment advice, nor is YCharts acting as an advising party regarding client funds in any way. Finally, a recording of this webinar will be sent to all attendees. Today I'll be covering our portfolio functionality and all the tips and tricks that come along with it. This is going to be more of a marathon than a sprint, but I assure you that it's going to be extremely helpful and you'll find takeaways throughout the entire demonstration. In today's advisory world, portfolios are always a part of the discussion, whether it's how your products are fitting into a client's portfolio or simply analyzing the portfolio at a higher level to determine where you can add value. We offer tools to help along every step of the way for that process. It all begins with getting the portfolio into the platform, which is fairly simple and straightforward. Once that's done, you can actually analyze the portfolio as a whole or even drill down into individual holdings to figure out where there might be an opportunity to make improvements. And then after you have an idea of what changes you might propose, they can be captured and compared to the original portfolio through PDF reports or other areas of the platform. Now, let's shift into the platform itself to begin with model portfolios. So right now I'm on the model portfolios page, and if you don't know how to find it, it's simple. It's going to be under tools and model portfolios. So this is going to be the area where you will upload all of your models, all of the client portfolios. You can even create custom or blended benchmarks. And all that's going to be run from this create button in the upper right-hand corner. So if you click on create, you have two options. You can create a blank model portfolio or create a new model from a template. New from template is actually pretty helpful because we start you off with a couple generic ETF models or fund models. We also give you the ability to create custom or blended benchmarks based on certain equity fixed income splits. So if I were to create a 60-40 benchmark or 40-60 and so on, I can use this as a template to set me up to build that without me manually selecting all that information. So it would look like something like this. And go ahead and jump back to that model portfolio page. And if we're entering a client model, we're always going to start with blank model portfolio. So if I click on the create button, I'll select blank model portfolio, and everything's pretty simple and straightforward as to how to build out the model or what information I'm going to input here. So let's say we're working with client Jane Doe at ABC Financial. So I'll go ahead and name that portfolio like so. And the name is important because you can actually type search for that model throughout the entire platform just like you would a fund or ETF. You can also add a description. And let's say this is going to be a moderate type allocation, or a 60-40, let's call it. You can add additional detail in the description line to easily help identify that model or what it sort of accomplishes. Next, advisory fees. You could pass this up most of the time unless the advisor would really want to see what their fee, whether they charge annually or quarterly, would look like on top of the returns of that model. Next, you'll choose a benchmark, and that could be any single benchmark or a custom blended benchmark that you've created within the platform. So by default, we have the S&P here, but as we just discussed, you saw how I created a template that had a 60-40 split. I can enter that same 60-40 model into this benchmark field and use that as my benchmark for the model portfolio. Next comes the rebal frequency. How often are we rebalancing? Is it going to be quarterly, annually, monthly, or there's also an option for never? So most of the time, that'll be an annual rebal. So we'll select that. Then we'll move on to start a securities history. That's going to be newest security. You want to go with newest because that's going to default to the common inception date. Oldest security would give you the full track record dating back to the oldest fund in that model. However, it would drop out securities as they weren't around and reweight the entire model or portfolio. And then initial series level is nothing more than a starting point. So we'll leave it as is at 10,000. And then we can begin adding the holdings and the weights. And you can continue to add items here. But a lot of times you're going to be dealing with models that are pretty lengthy. If we have anything past 20, 30 holdings, we could hold up to 100. But in that event, you're going to want a much more streamlined process. And that's why we've created the ability to upload data. So if you click on the upload button on the right-hand side of the page, this is actually going to allow you to download a template. A very simple vanilla type template where all you need to do is enter in the ticker and the weights for that portfolio. So if you click on download, that'll give you the download template. And if you have something from your client that includes that information where you can copy and paste it, I actually have an example pulled up here. So let's say we have, ABC Financial, moderate model. We have the holdings and the weights. I can simply select these, copy them, drop them right into my template. You can see it's as vanilla as can be. You have your tickers as well as the weights. And the weights will need to be in percent format, so in that sort of decimalized version, or if you convert that to a percentage, either or, you'll want to go ahead and save that down. So we have our holdings template there. We'll go ahead and jump back to the upload where I can drop my file in. So I'll go ahead and just browse or drag and drop. Upload my template, click submit. So now I have all those holdings as well as the weights, adds up to 100. I can click on update, which locks in all the information I have selected, and then I can save down my model. Now the model is going to start to calculate and establish itself in the system, and this could take anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes, dependent on everything that's happening behind the scenes within the site. But as you can see, it's calculating there. And if I click into the model, that'll bring me into the quote page. So it's actually already complete. If it's not complete, it will show you how much time you have remaining or the completion rate of the model portfolio. So now that we have this in here, the quote page is going to give us everything we'd expect to see off the top at that portfolio level. So key statistics at the aggregate level, you're going to have holdings, asset allocation, return information. You can drill down into the additional tabs as well. So performance, allocations, everything you'd expect to see for that model. I'm going to pause here for a minute and talk about other areas of the site where you can actually leverage this information. And one of those areas is going to be the dashboard. So if you have some higher profile teams that you work with, or there's a team that you're working with currently that it's a pretty big project or you're working on an allocation with, this is going to be a good thing to publish to the dashboard. And a lot of folks have dedicated a tab on the dashboard to portfolios of their clients. So that would just simply consist of creating a new tab, maybe calling it portfolios, and setting that up with information that you're going to want to keep track of. So in this portfolios tab, I can create a watch list that contains any of the model portfolios. You'll notice there's a dedicated list type where we can actually name it and add anything we want. So I'm just going to call this list portfolios, or we can even call it client portfolios. And then we can go ahead and add Jane Doe at ABC Financial. We'll go ahead and save that, and that'll publish a watch list. And you can add as many model portfolios here. You can create separate watch lists for separate clients, but we now have Jane Doe's model on our dashboard. So we're going to track something like the daily percent change in that model. How did that do yesterday? It was up 76 basis points. We can jump over to the data tab to see at that aggregate or model level, what do the risk statistics look like? What do the returns look like? How does that match up with other models? You can jump over to holdings and see the actual underlying holdings here, what the target weights are. Has there been a lot of drift? What's the performance been like over the day? A couple different items that you can look at just to get a feel for how those holdings have performed. So those are the key areas of the watch list as it relates to kind of managing those models or keeping an eye on them. On the flip side, you can also take a look at the charts. Use those to get an understanding of how those models are stacking up. So I'll go to create new chart on the right-hand side of the page here. And once again, I'll name this portfolios. And we can go ahead and add our first portfolio there, our Jane Doe portfolio, and then anything else that we'd want to sort of benchmark it against or track performance against. So, maybe we pop SPY in, we can go with AGG as well, and then even that 60-40 blend that I mentioned earlier. So the 60-40 benchmark, S&P, and the ag. Financial metric, the one that we're going to want to use is total return level, which is basically that catch-all. It could be used on anything from ETFs and funds to model portfolios and indices. It's going to give us the total return, dividends and distributions reinvested, and then we'll go ahead and normalize that data. Save that down, and now that chart's published to our dashboard. So if we want to get a good feel or a good read on how a particular portfolio has performed year to date, how that's sort of stacking up versus some of the other portfolios or indices, this is a great way to do so, or to keep tabs on that information. Now, when it comes to the actual analysis of the portfolio and digging a little bit deeper, one of the best ways to do that is within a tool called comp tables. And you can access comp tables, you guessed it, under the tools dropdown. So tools and comp tables will get us there. And we're starting with a blank comp table, but the idea is to drill down into the individual holdings of that portfolio. And we're going to do that by clicking on this list button. And the list button allows you to pull in an entire list of securities, whether that's a watch list or whether that's the underlying holdings of a model. So once I select list, you'll have some tabs up top to choose from. Majority of the time, it's going to be funds. If you do have stocks or individual stocks in the portfolio and you do choose funds, it is a catch-all, so it'll pull everything from that portfolio in. So under this funds tab, you'll see my model portfolios. And we'll go ahead and we will expand my model portfolios, and we'll look for that Jane Doe model. There it is. And then we'll click submit. So now I have all the holdings of that model within the comp table. Now, what do I want to know about these holdings? I can just go one by one and pull in information that I might be interested in. So if I want to look at something like a year-to-date total return, max drawdown, the information that's interesting to me, I can pull in directly and then sort those columns to see how everything sort of stacks up. We also have some pre-canned metric sets that are very easy to navigate and extremely helpful in identifying, maybe some laggards in that model or identify opportunities. So if I go to this metric set dropdown and choose open metric set, one of my favorites that I often like to share is using the rank and category metric set. So if I choose that and pull that up, as you can see, it gives me all the different time frames for Morningstar rank and category information. And quick tip here, what I usually do is I click this double down arrow next to metrics just to kind of collapse things and clean up that view so I can see the full table. So now that I have this information up in front of me, I see all the rank and category data, I see all the holdings, but sometimes I might not be familiar with funds and might not understand what category they're in or what they do. So I can also add qualitative information to this table by clicking on the Add Info column button. So if I click on Add Info columns, I have the ability to pull in the category, and that'll be under Fund Info. So I'm going to go to Fund Info on the left-hand side, then select Category Name. So this is just going to make it a lot easier for me to identify exactly what these funds do, what kind of assets they hold or what they accomplish. So now that I have that there, I can think to myself, okay, well, if I see anything here that's sort of lagging or doesn't look great in terms of that category rank, I could look at the category and say, well, I have a competitive fund in that category. That might be a great opportunity for me or a good conversation to bring up or show that advisor how I can add value to their portfolio by swapping something out. So the idea here would be just kind of jumping through these different ranking category data points to figure out where we might be able to add value, what we can replace. If there's something there that's not doing too good, let's identify that and let's address the issue. So if we just kind of jump through here, one thing that I'm noticing or that I'll kind of key in on is in the large growth category, we see that advisor is using the ETF IWF, and I might have another product or a proposal that would look better, could better suit the needs of the advisor in the portfolio. So I can go back and swap that out for what I believe to be a better fit. So let's move on to that. Let's talk about the fact that we've identified something we can replace or a shift in allocation. Now, how do we communicate that and how do we visualize that? What we'll do is we'll go back to the model portfolio section, so tools and model portfolios, and we have that original model that's already been built out. So that'll appear in our list, and there's going to be an arrow or a drop down next to that particular model. So as you can see, there's multiple ways you can kind of choose to work with that model, but we're going to duplicate it. And we're just going to take a carbon copy of this model. We'll call it Jane Doe ABC Financial Proposed, just so we can identify what the original is and what the proposal is. So we're going to duplicate that. And the model has to establish itself in the system before you can make any changes to it. So that's why it's currently calculating. So once that's finished, we'll jump in and we'll make those adjustments. And while it calculates, you can jump into other areas of the site. You can have discussions on individual holdings to kill some time if you are doing this live on a demonstration or live in a meeting. But it is now available, so I can click on that edit button. Then I can edit the items of the model. You want to make sure you click that edit items button. It opens up the ability to edit the holdings and the weights. So let's say we're taking a look at IWF. That's what's in there for large cap growth right now. Maybe we swap that out for QQQ, which is had a great track record recently. Holds the NASDAQ 100. We feel like that would be a better fit there. So let's just say that's the first scenario. So we also notice on the fixed income side of things that there's really not a whole heck of a lot of tax efficiency, and we also see a pretty big chunk allocated to short-term treasuries, and we feel like this advisor might be at an advantage taking on a bit more risk. So maybe what we can do is we scale back the ag allocation a little bit to 10%, also scale back SHV to 5%, so we have a 10% allocation hanging out there. what we can do is we can actually add something. There's zero muni exposure in this portfolio right now. Maybe we add some muni exposure. So we'll add a 10% allocation to MUB. Go ahead and click Update. Save down the model. It's going to recalc. And then once that's done, what we can do is we can bring those two models or those two portfolios into other areas of the site. We can view them in multiple tools. We can also generate a report to compare them. So one of the first areas that I want to cover is one of the simplest, and that's the fundamental chart. So we'll go to Tools and Fundamental Chart. As I mentioned earlier, it's important what you name the model because you can type search for it. So if I just jump into my security search box up here, and I start typing the name of the model, we see we have it available. So I'm just going to type in the two models here. We have the original as well as the proposed. And we could take a look at historically how those portfolios done. What's the drawdown look like? What's the performance look like? Is it going to make a significant impact? So you have a lot of flexibility there to look at certain, market events, economic events, and the impact that might have on the portfolio. So that's a very simple and effective way to communicate the change or visualize the change. I also want to cover the ability to use our Quickflows for model portfolios. So Quickflows is a function that was released recently where you can input particular funds, ETFs, or even model portfolios, and it's going to build out use cases or sales ideas for you. So if we jump into the comparison Quickflow, what we can do is we can take a look at these two portfolios and bring them into multiple scenarios. So let me go ahead and add these both in. And we've also released a brand new Quickflow which allows you to run correlation. So I'm going to pull in SPY as what I want to run a correlation against. And it'll basically run the correlation against these three items through the fundamental chart. So I've entered in those items. I'm going to go ahead and click correlation analysis. And basically what we're looking at when we reach this result is it gives you a list. So it sort of takes that particular item and runs the correlation against everything you've put in to the comparison Quickflow. So if we want to take a look at the correlation to the S&P, I'm going to go on the arrows until I get to SPY as the ticker. So I'm just going to click a couple times to reach that, and now I see, okay, flat line of 1 for the S&P. Yeah, that's pretty obvious, 100% correlation. But then we take a look at the two models, and we can determine that, okay, well, we might have a difference in the correlation here between one of the models versus the other. So, it might be a positive note or better to not be as correlated to the S&P, which we can easily identify using this chart. And then when it comes to the correlation data, we use the last 120 trading days when we're looking at the total return. So total return over the last 120 trading days is what's used in that calculation to determine the correlation value at the end of the chart here. Nice thing about this Quickflow feature is the fact that you can jump right back to it and it stores what you have selected. So I can easily shift to another one of these Quickflows, and maybe I go from correlations to tax-adjusted returns. And that was one of the components that we sort of discussed, is scaling back some of that fixed income allocation and gaining some exposure to munis. So if I click on this tax adjusted return comparison, that'll bring me into the comp tables tool. And I've removed the S&P or SPY just because that was no longer relevant. But same deal here. We're going to get the list of metrics. Go ahead and collapse that just so I can get a better understanding here. And the way that this is broken out, you have the returns, the tax cost ratio, which is essentially the percentage of gains that's being eaten by taxes, as well as the tax adjusted returns. And these are done on an end of month basis. So this will be as of the previous month end. But you can see the difference in tax cost ratio between the current model and the proposed model. And you can see how that impacts the returns. So if that's a focus, tax efficiency, this is a great way to kind of communicate that or demonstrate that to the advisor. And we can see across the board, that change in the model is having a positive impact on the portfolio when it comes to the tax cost ratio and the returns. And then last but not least, to sort of round everything out, you have the ability to run comparison reports. So those are going to be easily done through that model portfolio section. If I go to tools and model portfolios, you're always going to want to start with the proposed model here, because that's going to be the first one displayed within the report. So I'll start here, click on the drop down next to that model. There's also a report button available if you click into the model. So if you click the drop down arrow, generate report, that's one way to do it. You can also click into the model itself and you'll see the report button in the upper right hand corner. We click on the report button, you'll get a wide range of reports that you can run. The side-by-side reports are all going to be comparison reports. So that's going to allow you to input two different portfolios and compare them. Anything that does not contain the word side-by-side is going to be strictly related to the portfolio that you have selected. So the one that I usually lean on is the comprehensive report, because that captures everything we have to offer as it relates to the report. So the side-by-side comprehensive, you can choose it with a benchmark or no benchmark. Oftentimes I feel the benchmark just creates a little bit of additional noise. So I'll go with no benchmark to really just hone in on the two portfolios side by side to compare and contrast. So I'll choose that side-by-side comprehensive report, click next. It's asking me what I want to compare it against, which is going to be the original model. So just Jane Doe ABC Financial, because we started with the proposed. We'll click next, and we have the ability to create a nice looking cover page for the client as an output. So what we can do is we can put in the advisor's name. We can enter our name, our phone number, as well as the website that the advisor can visit for more information. Then I'll go ahead and generate that report. That's going to kick off a PDF within a couple seconds. That is printer friendly or client friendly. It's going to contain that cover page based on the information that we entered. You'll have your logo in the upper left-hand corner. If you don't currently have that on your reports, please reach out to me. I can help you get that set up. And as we scroll down, we'll have the logo on the second page as well as a custom color scheme. Same as the logo. If you don't currently have that, please feel free to reach out to me and I can help get that set up. But you're going to have your return information. So cumulative returns, growth of 10K over 10 years, or common inception, whichever is going to come first there. Periodic returns, annual returns. And then as we continue to scroll down, you get all the allocation and exposure information. So you can see, what those changes in the portfolio were and how they've made an impact. So as we continue to kind of scroll down here, all of our equity data, as well as our fixed income data. As we can kind of see here, what jumps out to me is the current model has a lot more AAA exposure, whereas we dialed that back a little bit and took on a bit more risk. So you'll notice that there's a bit more AA and single A exposure within that recommended model. You have your top 10 holdings side by side, so you can differentiate what that looks like or what the makeup of the portfolio is. Then you have risk information, MPT stats, risk reward charts, as well as fundamentals. And then one of the most important aspects of our outputs is going to be the custom disclosures. And most of you have had a compliance team that have reviewed these reports and have signed off on them, have provided custom disclosures. If they have not, if you're not currently able to send the reports or use the reports, I'm always happy to discuss with the compliance team. We'll get you set up. Feel free to shoot me a note and we'll get that up and running. And that basically wraps up today's webinar on portfolio analysis and proposals. Hoping this information shared is valuable and you're able to successfully apply it to your business. I want to reiterate that the recording for the webinar will be sent to all registrants and attendees in case you need to review anything we went over or share any of this with your colleagues. And once again, for any questions that may have been submitted during the presentation, I'll be reaching out soon with the information that you're looking for. But thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. We always appreciate any feedback that you might have. If you have any questions regarding anything that we covered today, please feel free to reach out to me at kyle@ycharts.com.